what we're going to do here is start getting into the exercise science. So we're going to start taking a look at the human body, how it works, how it operates. We're going to start getting into some of the systems. So you're going to look at the cardiovascular system. You're going to be looking at the digestive system. So different systems of the body, how they work, but not just here's the different structures that are involved and this is what they do and what they go through. It's really, here's some information that you need to know. And what I want to really kind of preface for you guys is really pay attention to what the presenters are saying, because they're going to kind of bring it to life for you. And as they do that, be aware and kind of store that. Make some notes. Feel free to write things down and make little notes or draw pictures or however you learn, because this information is going to be extremely important as you get on later in this part of the certification as well as in part 2, because it's really the building blocks and the foundation for what you're going to be seeing in the practical application as we go into part 2. So enjoy this. Make sure you pay attention. Don't be afraid to rewind it and play it back so you can hear what you need to hear. Have some fun. All right, we'll see you pretty soon.
So in this chart here, I have a bit of a comparison of the most high-density foods and the most low-density foods. The high-density foods include things like brightly colored fruits and vegetables, things like dark, leafy green vegetables, things like lean meats and fish, and things like whole grains, unprocessed. On the low-density side, it includes things like white bread, pasta, and rice, chips, crackers, and pretzels, soda and juice, and candy and desserts. Now, we know many of these foods on the low-density side are usually considered unhealthy or junk foods, but it's important to remember why. They're not just junk foods. It's because they have low nutrient density. The foods have a lot of calories and very little nutrition. And that's where we need to be steering our clients, toward the high-density foods. And that's another principle of good nutrition.
Some of the benefits of doing integrated exercises, well, essentially all you can suggest is that there's probably a greater potential for weight loss using whole body exercises. Now, the vast majority of the people who come and train in gyms and the members that give us all our great income through this stream, essentially they probably want some hypertrophy and they probably want some weight loss. Generally speaking, you would suggest that integrated whole body exercises burn more calories and potentially are better for weight loss. And potentially, on the other side of the scale, isolation is probably a little bit more superior when it comes to hypertrophy. So a blend of these ideas is perfectly adequate. It's about knowing when to introduce them and when not to necessarily. Now, generally speaking, you would say that using whole body integrated exercises, so long as the range of motion and the complexity and the speed of the movement is under control, you would suggest that they would probably give you a better scope for reducing the risk of injury. So producing force or coping with forces and spreading that load over a large amount of segments and joints probably reduces collectively the risk of injury, so long as, like I said before, the range of motion and the speed and the forces that you're dealing with are all kept in check. And also it has a tendency to counteract the lifestyle-driven postural distresses that we have. You know, we drive a lot, we sit a lot, we don't do things that are very natural and standing up and moving a lot. So some of those things with integrated exercises, if you prescribe them very well, can have a really good impact upon some of the postural distresses that we encounter all the time. And also, potentially it builds on the basis that you may have used machines in the starting period of your exercise prescription with a member. You start them on exercise machines until they feel comfortable about the exercise process in the first place, and then you might move them a bit more off the machines into movements, and they still may be potentially isolated, but then you can move them into doing more complex movements along this pathway. And what we really find is that the more compound movements, the more integrated movements have a better transfer effect to real life tasks. They replicate real life far more than a machine can.
The digestive system is a system that breaks down what you eat and converts it into energy so that you can live, and waste so that you can remove whatever you don't need from your body so you don't get what's called auto-intoxication or self-poisoning. The function of digestion is to serve metabolism in one right, and metabolism is essentially a process by which a variety of chemical cascades called the Krebs cycle basically takes the food molecules that you eat and with them produces the energy that you need to run your body And at the cellular level, the energy we use to run our body is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now, with digestion, we basically have the need to break foods down into smaller particles, and as I'm sure you're aware, some of these food sources come from a variety of different areas in nature. The way we break down animal foods is different than the way we break down plant foods, and the way we break down simple sugars is different than the way we break down alcohol, for example.
Pronation through the body is typically associated with an absorption of force. So that's typically something that we speak about when we talk about the foot. The foot is pronated, which means the arch of the middle foot is collapsing in, and then everything follows it. So if you stand up right now and you flatten out the arch of your foot, you would look down and see your lower legs rotate in because of that. And if your lower legs rotated in because of that, you would see that your femurs would rotate in. And if your femurs rotated in, then you would see your pelvis begin to spill more anteriorly. So that pronation that we see as a common ineffective or inefficient posture affects basically most of the lines, but mostly these ones here. So superficial back line, spiral line, lateral line, and the deep front line, because they will all have interactions with the foot coming in, and then the chain reaction of everything else as an influence of the foot changing its position, and everything else will change its position up the chain.